now. We are here with a side story called The Cursed Sun by our player MBS Tanuki. The dark-scaled Sandwing was awake in the middle of the night, despite the exhaustion he felt. He'd known this his entire life, but it was particularly bad tonight. The bags under his eyes were large, deep, taxing him further. His tail was curled around himself, wings pressed tightly against his sides to keep himself warm in the freezing desert night. The three-moon sky above him was bright. He wondered, as he often did on nights like this, if any nightwings were hatching with powers like those he'd often heard about. He closed his eyes, and when he reopened them, it was suddenly morning. He strained against his own weight to stand upright. As usual, his head hurt, and he felt so heavy. The fatigue he battled with settled back over him within the hour, and as he walked toward the kitchen, greeted by his mother, a pale gold sandwing with a sharp stinger and kind eyes named Waddy. She looked so different from him, the only similarity being their horn colors. He would often think that maybe he looked more like his father. He looked back at his stinger, the deformed thing easy to see in this bright light. Waddy cleared her throat. Sidewinder, have you rested? You know your exams are today, right? The young dragon rolled his eyes and sighed. Yes, Mom, I know. I couldn't sleep. The pale-scaled sandwing stared at her son for a few moments, then nodded, gently putting a talon on his shoulder. You'll do great. You've been trained well, and I know she'll be happy to have you in her service. I know. I'm nervous. What if it doesn't go well? I mean, she's really difficult to impress, and I've not been very good with it. The older dragon smiled gently. Hey, dear, you're going to pass. I just know it. And if you don't, then you'll still have your favorite meal tonight. And a date souffle and camel milk for dessert. Sidewinder gently huffed, but hugged his mother. Thank you, Mom. I'll do my best. Maybe you're right, and I'll pass. Waddy, happily, comforting, hugged Sidewinder back. That's my boy. I'll see you afterward, all right? The dark dragon nodded, quickly taking and eating some ostrich eggs with saffron and sage before getting a talon full of berries and heading out. As he left, he placed the berries into a small bowl with some papyrus beneath it that simply said, For twig. When he got to the walkway, he glanced back at the bowl to see the little scavenger quickly putting the berries into a bag. After a few moments, he began to walk, sighing to himself anxiously, keeping his misshapen stinger tucked away. After far too short a walk, he was inside the building that was always far hotter than the dry desert outside. His wings twitched anxiously as he tried to swallow the anxiety. Finally, he spoke up. Miss Globemallow? Hello? An elder dragon came from the back, a grumpy expression on her red sand face, like she wasn't looking forward to what was coming up. Sidewinder, good, you're here. Ready for your test? Sidewinder sighed again, trying to steady himself before nodding. Yes, ma'am. Globemallow nodded lightly, then waved him over before walking back where she'd been before. The younger of the dragons hesitated for a few minutes before following her to the room where the wood and upholstery were kept. Sidewinder was quiet, although he very quickly got to work, beginning to slowly but surely build an entire couch. It took him all day before he was done, with few breaks that were filled with him speaking of his anxiety to his mentor and eating lunch and drinking cactus cider to keep himself going. When it was done, he looked at it. The thing being simple, covered in a luxurious deep red silk and lace. Suddenly, Globemallow jumped on top of it, putting her full weight on it, then jumping and acting like a dragonette. Sidewinder gasped in horror, then cowered back, expecting the couch to break. When it didn't, Globmallow smiled. It was weird to see such a thing on his mentor's face. And then he heard the words, "You passed." The dark Sadwing perked up, eyes wide, as he stared at her. He'd passed. he he had passed the exam, and he'd impressed his mentor. When she opened her mouth again, Sidewinder was even more shocked. "Queen Oasis will be pleased with this work too." Qu- Queen Queen Oasis? Yes, Queen Oasis. Now, go home. Tomorrow you'll be meeting her, as well as one of her generals. Sidewinder nodded and scrambled out, still surprised with the news. He never thought he'd pass this exam, let alone meet the Queen because of it. When he got home, he threw his wings around his mother, knocking the wind out of her. When she got to her senses again, Watty chuckled and smiled again. "I take it you've got good news." Sidewinder nodded quickly. I passed. I passed, and Global said I'll be meeting both the Queen and one of her generals." Watty stiffened slightly at the mention of the Queen and general, then muttered, "Did she say which one?" Sidewinder shook his head, confusion filling him. "Why? What's wrong?" Watty was quiet for a few moments before smiling again, although her brow crinkled nervously. "Oh, it's nothing, dear. I just get nervous when the generals are around, and there are very few people who are actually quite lenient. Not that that's a bad thing. It's simply best to be cautious." Sidewinder was quiet for a few moments before he nodded, a bit nervous again. "Oh, okay, all right." Watty soon pulled from the hug and ushered him to the table, which had dinner set out. Huge camel legs that were well seasoned and spicy. As they ate, the sounds of the chewing and breathing and teeth against bone felt too loud. Sidewinder felt like there was more that he wasn't being told, but he also felt as though he wouldn't get anything out of her. Very soon after dinner and dessert, he went to bed, curling up in his tight ball. After another of many sleepless nights, Sidewinder got up before Watty was even moving around. His legs moved on their own toward his destination, the sound of his heart pounding in his ears. When he went to open the door, it was still locked. He looked around at all the streets that were beginning to get busy now that the sun was peeking over the horizon, but Globemallow's shop wasn't open yet. He went to the back. The door there was cracked open. He looked in and saw that the couch he'd made the day before, then calmed down. As Sidewinder moved in, he was hit with the stench he'd never smelled before. As he continued on, he lowered himself to the floor, his stinger ready to strike. While it was malformed and didn't actually kill a dragon, it at least was good at knocking them out for a while. The stench kept getting stronger, and then he heard heavy breathing and a quiet chuckling. His ear twitched, and he was able to peek through some shelves to see an unfamiliar sandwing standing over a body. When he saw who the body was, Globemallow, Sidewinder let out a gasp before quickly covering his face and mouth, shaking lightly. The sandwing snapped his head towards Sidewinder, bright green eyes glowing toward him. He frowned for only a few moments before it was replaced with a sick grin. He was holding a spear, likely a soldier. As he walked closer, Sidewinder scrambled back further and further, trying to keep his lighter scales covered with the dark ones, hoping to keep himself hidden within the dark. The sandwing spoke in a sing-song voice. "Oh, come out, wherever you are." Sidewinder stayed quiet, staring before he finally found himself scrambling out and fleeing, tears of terror in his eyes. He felt so sick, having seen the one who taught him his craft dead on the floor, with that soldier over her. Had he done anything else to her? How badly had he tortured her before killing her? Was she still alive when Sidewinder was at the front? Could he have saved her? When he got home, Sidewinder slammed the door shut behind him, panting, trembling and crying. Watty walked into the main room, tilting her head as she yawned. "Oh, Sidewinder, what are you doing here? Oh, honey, what's wrong?" Sidewinder shook further, shaking his head as he sobbed. Globe Mallow, she's dead. The young dragon felt his mother's wings around him as he heaved. His stomach was trying to revolt, to get rid of any food he may have had in it. Finally, he heard his mother's voice. Sidewinder, dear, it'll be okay. She was old, not in good health. Sidewinder, still trembling, practically yelled as he felt his stomach dropping, the grief of pain in his voice. She was killed! Wadi grew quiet again, her eyes wide. She then lowered her head, growling at Sidewinder lightly. What did you do? I didn't do in... Suddenly, the door burst open. Queen Oasis and that dragon he had seen earlier walking in. The queen glowered down at Sidewinder, who shrunk back before turning her attention to his mother. She hissed out, Wadi of the Sandwings, for the murder of Globe Mallow, you are to be put to death. General Cactus, take her. Wadi's eyes widened and she shook her head. What? But I didn't do anything. I just woke up. As she struggled and tried to back away, Cactus slammed himself into her side, toppling her over with that twisted grin. He then turned his head to Sidewinder, his eyes boring into him, and whispered in a low hiss that the queen could hear. You shouldn't have come in early, dear. He snorted slightly at his own mocking of the dragonette before bringing a now bound-up Wadi to her feet. Sidewinder shook more and yelled, Leave my mom alone! Now! She didn't do anything! It was you! Oasis's head snapped towards Sidewinder, and she growled, walking over, lowering her huge head down to be snout to snout with the youngling. She was conspiring to treason. If you don't want the same thing to happen to you, then maybe you should learn to mind yourself, little whelp. Sidewinder had backed into the wall, then swung a set of talons at Oasis before everything went entirely black. When he awoke again, Sidewinder had a throbbing headache. He had a deep wound directly under his wing, and it was late in the day. His mother was gone. Everything was a mess still. There was blood all over the place, and he was entirely alone. His body was shaking as he found himself heaving and sobbing again. He had tried to save her, tried to fight back, but to no avail. He was useless, and now he hated himself for it. He finally moved out, shaking, then falling back to laying down right as he reached the doorway. He looked over at the bowl and saw the little scavenger, doing as it had always done at this time of day, simply gathering berries from that bowl and running off. Sidewinder found everything slowly fading away again, before he was unconscious again, though he promised he would never bow to those who showed him cruelty again. Thus ends our short story of the Cursed Sun. And now we have our writer and the player for Sidewinder. Before we actually end up starting any of the questions, what ended up kind of making you build this sort of character? What made you write the story kind of this way?
The short answer, it'd be mad funny.
That's fair, it's fair.
The slightly more serious answer, I like to give my characters trauma. And usually that trauma includes intertwining other characters.
Yes. Whenever we ended up kind of starting this, I ended up, kind of putting out 3 little prompts for everybody. And for everybody who, doesn't know, our player, Envious Tanuki, ended up absolutely just immediately jumping onto them. It was like, yes, I need that one. Give me that one.
Me traumatize him more. Him being unable to sleep at all times totally isn't traumatizing enough.
Yeah. All right, let's get into our questions, though. So for the first question that I have for you, what first got you into Wings of Fire?
Uh, uh, so the first thing that really got me into Wings of Fire, funnily enough, I was actually looking through Audible. This isn't sponsored by them, by the way, but it was a few years ago. Uh, and I was really bored, and I wanted a story that I could just kind of turn off my brain while I was working. And I stumbled upon the Dragonette Prophecy. And then I was hooked from
Yeah.
then on.
Yeah, that was basically how I ended up getting hooked. You
I
guys
think
ended
you
up,
also got bullied.
yeah, y'all ended up bullying me into it, and after a while, eventually I was like, all right, you know what, all right, I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
I ended up trying it. I actually first ended up getting the graphic novel for the very first one, because I wanted an easy introduction to kind of like see if
Yeah.
I would enjoy it first. And I was like, no, yeah, this is actually pretty good. I actually enjoy this. So I ended up getting the first book, and I started reading it.
Yeah.
On to the second question. Why did you end up choosing Sidewinder for this story? Not the side story, but for this campaign.
Well, it's a few reasons. One of which I really wanted to characterize him more because he'd just been kind of sitting collecting dust for a while. Second, I thought it would be really, really interesting to have a character with weird mechanics. Because I always like to play around with weird mechanics and create characters that seem like they should not ever work in any given situation and force them to work in those situations.
Yeah, for everybody who isn't aware, we are playing Dungeons and Dragons. We're playing 5e, not the new version that came out. But our player for Sidewinder is actually playing a homebrew class that I had found a long time ago, and they absolutely fell in love with it. In fact, I'll let you tell a little bit more about it, so that way I don't take up all the time.
I don't really remember much about it. It was kind of a slurry of just, what do I do? What am I doing? Blah, 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 blah. But, I really liked the way the cursed class was because I figured it would be interesting because while it's not really mentioned in his story, uh, his father is very much cursed, and we kind of, I kind of figured it'd be interesting to see a side of what if the curse passed on in a different way? Thus, Sidewinder is now part of the cursed class because the cursed class be having it where you're using your curse to help you. Use it to your advantage. It's about best I can describe it. I'm not good at describing things.
That's fair. In short, if any of you end up being interested in the abilities and whatnot that Sidewinder's using, on DM's Guild, you can end up looking up the Accursed class. I might be able to put it in the description below. We'll see. But it is
You
made.
probably can.
Yep, it is made
Maybe.
by Outlandish Adventure Productions on DM's Guild. It's very good. With that being said, there is no sleepy curse that's on there. That one we had to kind of handcraft to go alongside it, as there's a lot of subclasses. But anyways,
Yeah.
on to the third question. Where is it that you hope that this story takes not only you, but the rest of these players?
Uh, for the most part, I'm along for the ride, but I kind of hope that there's not as much inner internal interpersonal drama between everyone as I have been forcing to happen the last couple of campaigns.
I want to be friends. I've decided I don't want to push people away.
Yeah, so I'm definitely kind of playing Sidewinder very differently than I have been the last couple. He's a little more similar to how Cold Snap was in the last campaign,
Mm-hmm.
but he's literally just tired and he doesn't mind people. He's just like, careful, please. I'm tired. You might also be infected with tired.
Do not go to sleep next to me. It would not end well.
Yeah, you'll be really tired for like a week. But at least you won't be tired for like a year and asleep that whole time from my stinger, like that one scavenger, which was a butthole, and set my house on fire after defecating on it.
Yeah. Alrighty. Final question for you. Can you tell me what's going through Sidewinder's mind at this point currently in the story?
Ooh, it's kind of tricky, but I'll try to do it as just as I can. So, obviously, they burned down my house. In fact, they exploded it, is one major thing. However, once he gets over that ish, he's more on the along the lines of, I'm concerned about Twig and his little friend, and I kind of want to help him because, you know, I'm used to seeing him around, and I would not like him to be dead because he went to steal the queen's treasure.
Indeed. I mean, at this point, Twig is the only form of connection that you have remaining of your old life, of Sidewinder's old life.
Yeah. Yeah, because somebody burned down and exploded his house.
Yeah, they did indeed.
After defecating on the porch.
Just insult to injury.
Yeah.
Alright.
I thought I had the oil safely under those floorboards.
Yeah, nobody exactly thinks that their house is going to be set on fire just randomly, especially, you know, whenever there's 3 other people in there who is hopefully going to end up recognizing the fire, but then rolled really badly. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Do you have any final things that you'd end up liking to say before we end off this?
Well, I would like to say that I hope whoever is watching the campaign is enjoying it so far, even though it's 1 episode in, but, you know, hope that it's enjoyed, that y'all like the whole interpersonal stuff going on and everything.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. And with that, everybody who's, you know, kind of watching out there, check out the Twitch. We live stream our campaigns. Otherwise, you can end up looking down in the description. Maybe I remembered or figured out how to put the link in the description for the homebrew class that is being played. Maybe I didn't. We'll find out. But otherwise, you can end up finding our Discord down in the description, where you can end up joining and talking to our players and ask them any questions that maybe you like. But that is going to have to end it for this time. We'll end up catching you guys on the next one.